Next one is threatening. Now I know that you've heard this, and threatening sounds like this. If you do A, then I'm gonna hurt you in some way. That's the threat. So it's you better not, because if you do, there's gonna be pain. Now, we do this with our spouses and our life partners, we do it with our children, and we do it at work sometimes. So what do you do if you threaten and it doesn't work? Well, then you know you've been taught, right? Don't you dare threaten something you're not willing to, right, follow through on. So if you threaten and it doesn't work, then of course you've got to jack that up to punishing. Now here's where I like to talk a little bit about a difference between males and females. Now I'm not trying to set up any stereotypes or anything, but as a general rule, men and women punish differently. A man in a relationship punishes by withdrawing attention. They stop talking. They withdraw into themselves. They stop listening. That really hurts a woman. They know right how to go for the jugular. But we do the same darn thing. We don't withdraw attention. No, we withdraw affection or sex. So often, we know how to get to the jugular as well. We know what will be most hurtful to our partner. So we need to try to avoid the threats so that we don't then feel compelled to go into the punishing. And then the last one we talked about earlier, you recognize this is a deadly habit, and that's bribing. Often we think bribing is a good thing because it's not supposed to involve pain, right? Bribing is about holding up the carrot and saying, if you do this, I'll give you this. Or, I'm sorry, the stick is the if you do this, I'll give you this, which is the carrot. So you know what you want the person to do. You offer them something you think they want. And oftentimes research shows us that you will perform or work for a bribe, or sometimes it's called a reward. You'll work for something that you want. I can tell you, I'll do a lot of things for chocolate. But if you try to give me celery and carrot sticks, I may not be interested in performing for you. So you have to find a bribe that'll work, that I'm interested in. And then, once you get me to do what it is you want me to do, and the bribe is gone or the reward is gone, what do you think happens? Do you think I'm going to just continue to do that because I think it's a good thing to do? No way. In fact, I'll probably do it less often because I'm frustrated and angry that I was controlled and manipulated in the first place. So even though I like what you're offering, I'm not going to feel very kindly towards you. It definitely pulls us apart instead of bringing us together. Nobody likes to be controlled or manipulated. Nobody. All right, so I'm sure you may be looking at this list and saying, I'm a terrible person, I do all of these things. Well, I once had a woman come up to me on break after I'd gone through these. It was a parenting workshop, and she was actually sobbing her heart out, saying, I use all of these with my children. I also did this at a workshop for the staff of a residential treatment program for adolescent males. And when they saw this list, they said, oh my goodness. They said, this is what we do 24/7 with those kids in the name of therapy or therapeutic treatment. We use these. And so once it was outlined and looked at in this way, they started to make some changes. So I'm not going to ask you to stop doing these. I don't ever even say that that's a good thing to do. What I'd rather have you do is just pay attention to when you use these, because we often do these on automatic pilot. So start thinking about what you're actually doing. Recognize when you use one, and all you have to do is kind of record it in your head and say, oh, there I go, I'm criticizing. Now, you think, what good is that going to do? Well, what it does is when it brings it to your conscious awareness, you will involuntarily just reduce your use of these. So it might be helpful for you to keep a journal. If you want to keep a journal of your use or your reduced use of the destructive relationship habits. All right, now I want to talk about the healthy ones. So the first one I like to talk about, because I think it could be the easiest of all, is listening. Now, those of you watching this video are about to become coaches, and you're already licensed helping professionals. So I'm sure you're already good at listening, and that you consider listening to be one of your strengths. And what I just want to do now is to distinguish for you, I'm not just talking about hearing someone else. And I think you already know this distinction. But what I'm talking about when I talk about listening is actually listening for understanding. You're trying to understand where the other person is coming from, as if you're standing in their shoes, living in their skin, seeing through their eyes the world the way that they see it. Now, of course, you can never perfectly understand because, you're not that person. But if you're truly listening, you're trying to understand as opposed to just wait for them to finish their sentence so you can jump in with your wisdom. I remember a time when I woke up in the morning, it was a school day, and I went to my mother, and I said, I can't go to school today, Mom, look at this big zit I have on the end of my nose. I was just so devastated. I did not want to go to school. I was mortified. Now, of course, I was 14 years old, and this zit on my nose was probably no big deal, which of course my mother told me. She said, Kimberly, get your clothes on, you have to go to school. There was no listening for understanding at all. Now, I'm not suggesting that my mother should have allowed me to stay home from school. That's not what I'm saying. But a simple, oh, honey, I remember what it was like when I was your age and I had a zit on my nose. I didn't want to go to school either. But what will happen is you'll go and you'll realize nobody's really going to notice. It'll be okay. That would have been listening for me. I didn't get that. And we don't want, I'm not criticizing my mother. I love my mother. But she said to me, I remember she said, you won't even remember this, a couple months from now. Well, I was 14 then. I'm 51 now. I still remember it. So, listening is a good thing to do for understanding. All right. So the next one is supporting. Now, this is when I like to use a quote of Dr. Martin Luther King's. He said, the true measure of a man, and I like to add, or a woman, is not where she stands in times of comfort and convenience, but where they stand in times of challenge and controversy. So how that translates for me is it's easy to support someone when they're doing what you want them to do. It's not so easy to support someone when they're making life more difficult for you. So when I think about my biggest challenge so far in my life, in the supporting area, came when my 17-year-old son told me he wanted to join the Army and go to Iraq. Now, I'm not in any way saying I'm not proud of him. I'm not saying I'm not proud of our veterans. But I am saying that as a mother, that was the last thing I wanted my baby boy to do, was to go to war where he was going to be shot at and have to worry about bombs blowing up around him. But I knew, because I knew about destructive and healthy relationship habits, that I was going to have to support this decision or it was going to tear us apart. And we were not going to have that strong relationship foundation I wanted him to be able to count on when he was over there in Iraq. So supporting is important. And then after that, we look at encouraging. Now, encouraging is different from supporting. Encouraging is more about being someone's cheerleader, right? Cheering them on to the things that they're trying to accomplish. When I think about encouraging, I think about the movie Dumbo, that kid's movie Dumbo about the elephant who had the big ears. And what could Dumbo do that was unique? That's right, he could fly. But did he know he could fly in the beginning? No, he didn't know. The first time he flew in his sleep. And the only person who knew was who? That's right, his little mouse friend. He had a little mouse that was on his back when Dumbo decided to go flying. And the mouse knew he could fly, but Dumbo didn't know he could fly. So the mouse was trying to convince him to give it a try. And Dumbo was scared. He didn't believe he could do it. He thought he would crash. So the little mouse gave him a feather. And he said, Dumbo, this is a magic feather. You hold this feather and you'll be able to fly. And Dumbo believed it because he believed in a power outside of himself. He didn't think he could do it by himself. That's what I'm talking about when I'm talking about encouraging. Sometimes we need to be that feather for another person. We need to believe in them until they can believe in themselves. So as a coach, you're going to encourage your clients to do things they may not even know they can do, but you're going to give them the feather. You're going to be the one who believes in them until they're ready to believe in themselves. I've often had people in my audiences ask me, what's the difference between nagging and encouraging? Well, they'll say things like, nagging is negative and encouraging is positive, or things along those lines. But I say it's more specific than that. Nagging is something we do when we're trying to get someone to do what we want them to do. Encouraging is when you're trying to get someone to do what they want to do. So you're helping them develop the confidence and the skills they need to pursue their dreams. That's what encouraging is. All right. The next one is trusting. Now, this is a tough one because we all come with trust baggage, right? Have you ever been involved with someone who promised to do something for you and they didn't follow through? I didn't think I was the only one again. So trusting, we've had people break trust with us. Now here's a bit of a harder question. We don't like to answer it, but I really would like you to put your hand up if it's true for you. Have you ever promised to do something for another person and not followed through? Yes, you know it's true. You have to put your hand up. You have. And so we've all broken trust with other people. Why did you break trust? Is it because you're a terrible person? Is it because you lied and you made it up and you didn't mean to do it in the first place? Of course not. In the moment you made that commitment, you meant it with all of your heart and all of your being. But sometimes things get in the way. Sometimes things change and people are not able to follow through on the things that they've committed to. So when I talk about trust, I talk about two different things. One is I want you to trust people when they show you who they are. Now what that means is people are somewhat consistent. So if someone shows you that when they borrow money, they don't pay it back, then stop lending them money. Unless you were making a donation, you need to trust that they're not going to pay you back. That's what they've been consistently showing you. Now, if together you work out a plan that you feel good about and you think that person really can follow through, they've learned more responsible behavior to manage that loan, then you may want to trust them again. But that's a decision that you have to make. When you're working with a client and they make a plan with you, trust that their intention is to complete it. If they don't complete it, you don't need to beat them up. You don't need to feel bad that they didn't do what they said they were going to do. You just need to tighten up the plan, explore the reasons why, and plan for those for the next time. But trust is very important to healthy relationships. You have to have trust.